Two bowls, two continents, two stories of survival, slavery, spice, and celebration. One is a golden, coconut-kissed seafood stew, simmered in a clay pot on the beaches of Brazil. The other is a dark, smoky, roux-thickened pot of magic that built an entire city's identity in the swamps of Louisiana. Both were born from the same painful chapter of history. Both were shaped by three different peoples who never should have met, and yet did. Both are now considered national treasures. But only one of these dishes uses a spice made from tree bark. And only one of them has a secret third ingredient, so controversial that people in its own home country have argued about it for over 200 years. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which dish that is, and you'll never look at a bowl of stew the same way again. This is Moqueca versus Gumbo. Let's set the table. Moqueca, pronounced Moqueca, is Brazil's most famous seafood stew. Picture firm white fish or plump shrimp, simmered low and slow in a broth of coconut milk, red palm oil, tomatoes, peppers, and cilantro, until the whole thing turns a deep sunset orange. It's usually served bubbling straight from the clay pot it was cooked in, alongside white rice, toasted cassava flour, and a wedge of lime. In Brazil, moqueca isn't just dinner. In a 2013 survey by Brazil's Ministry of Tourism, it was voted the dish that no tourist's table could be without, even edging out the beloved feijoada. Gumbo, on the other hand, is Louisiana's culinary crown jewel, a thick, dark, deeply savory stew that can contain shrimp, crab, chicken, sausage, or all of the above, built on a foundation of a deeply browned roux, the holy trinity of onion, celery, and bell pepper, and often okra. It simmers for hours, filling entire neighborhoods with its aroma, and it's almost always ladled over a scoop of rice. It's so central to Louisiana identity that it's the official state dish. One dish smells like the tropics. The other smells like a Sunday afternoon in New Orleans. Both will make your mouth water before you even taste them. So which one has the richer history? Which one takes more skill to master? And which one would actually win in a head-to-head taste test? Let's dig in, starting at the very beginning. Here's where things get fascinating, because both of these dishes share a nearly identical DNA, even though they were born thousands of miles apart. Moqueca's story begins long before Portuguese ships ever touched Brazilian shores. The word moqueca is believed to come from the Tupi word moquém, describing the indigenous technique of slow-cooking food over hot coals, sometimes wrapped in leaves, long before there was ever a pot involved. According to Brazilian food historian Luís da Câmara Cascudo, the fish that indigenous peoples baked wrapped in leaves was originally called poqueca. Then, in the 1500s, Portuguese colonizers arrived, and with the horrific transatlantic slave trade, so did enslaved Africans, forced to Brazil's shores, particularly to the state of Bahia. These enslaved people, many of Yoruba and other West African descent, introduced dende, a vivid red palm oil central to West African cooking, along with coconut milk and fiery malagueta peppers. Layer by layer, an indigenous cooking method fused with African ingredients and Portuguese techniques, like sautéing onions and garlic, until moqueca as we know it slowly took shape over the following centuries. Gumbo's story reads like a cousin from another continent. In Louisiana, three cultures collided: French colonial cooking, West and Central African culinary traditions, and Native American ingredients. For generations, a popular legend claimed gumbo was invented in 1722, when French housewives, frustrated with unfamiliar Louisiana ingredients, learned local cooking techniques from a housekeeper who had studied Choctaw methods. It's a charming story, but modern food historians have largely debunked it. Without any documentation from that era, most historians now agree it was far more likely enslaved people of West African descent who were the true driving force behind gumbo's creation, not French colonists. What we do know for certain, the French contributed the technique of the roux, and the Choctaw people are credited with inventing filet powder. But the finished dish is overwhelmingly West African in character, closely resembling okra-based soups still cooked in Senegal today. Even the name gives it away. Many linguists trace gumbo to the Bambara word gombo, meaning okra, or to Bantu words like Kingombo or Quingombo, also meaning okra. So here's your first mind-blowing parallel. Both of these iconic national dishes were essentially invented by enslaved African communities, who took local indigenous ingredients and techniques and transformed them using the flavors of home. Two different continents. Two strikingly similar stories of resilience turning into cuisine. But here's a twist. Historians can't even agree on exactly when either dish officially appeared. The first documented references to gumbo only appeared around the turn of the 19th century, with gumbo served at a governor's reception in New Orleans in 1803. Moqueca's timeline is just as blurry. Most sources agree it developed over roughly 400 years along Brazil's Atlantic coast. But there's no single invention date to point to. Which raises a question. Does a dish need a clean origin story to be considered a national treasure? Or is the messiness of history, the blending, the borrowing, the survival, actually what makes these dishes so meaningful? Let's find out what's actually going into the pot. If you lined up the ingredients for both dishes side by side, you'd immediately notice one thing. These are dishes built almost entirely on what was locally available, plus a few signature imports that changed everything. Moqueca's core lineup starts with firm white fish, like grouper, snapper, or sea bass, or shrimp, sometimes both. Then coconut milk, in the Bahian version. Dende, that red palm oil, again in the Bahian version. Tomatoes, onions, and garlic. Bell peppers. Malagueta or other chili peppers. Fresh cilantro, and sometimes basil. A generous squeeze of lime juice. And in the Espirito Santo version, annatto oil replaces the dende, and olive oil replaces the coconut milk entirely. Gumbo's core lineup starts with the protein: shrimp, crab, oysters, chicken, andouille sausage, or some combination. Then the roux, flour, slowly cooked in oil or fat until it turns deep brown. The holy trinity of onion, celery, and bell pepper. Okra, in okra-based gumbos. Filet powder, made from ground sassafras leaves, often used as an alternative thickener to okra. Garlic, bay leaves, thyme, and cayenne pepper. Stock, whether chicken, seafood, or both. And of course rice, served alongside or underneath. Here's your first surprising contrast. Moqueca has no flour and no thickening agent at all. Its body comes purely from the coconut milk and the natural reduction of the broth. Gumbo, meanwhile, is built around thickening. You'll typically get it from a roux, okra, filet powder, or a combination of all three. And here's a genuinely divisive detail. Food historians love to point out. Tomatoes in gumbo are a real point of contention in Louisiana. Some cooks swear by them in okra-based gumbo, while others consider them an outright betrayal of the proper recipe. Sound familiar? Brazilians have an almost identical debate over their two competing moqueca styles. Bahians and residents of Espírito Santo passionately disagree, sometimes not very politely, about which version is the real moqueca. Turns out, no matter what continent you're on, there's always a food fight about what counts. So we've got the ingredients on the table. Now, how does each one actually get cooked? Traditionally, moqueca is cooked low and slow in a panela de barro, a black clay pot from Bahia that's seasoned with dende oil before its very first use. First, the fish or shrimp gets marinated in lime juice, garlic, and salt. Then onions, tomatoes, and peppers are layered into the clay pot, with the seafood placed on top. Coconut milk and dende oil are poured in, and the whole thing simmers gently, never stirred aggressively, since the layers are meant to cook together rather than blend into a mush. Fresh cilantro goes in right before serving. The clay pot isn't just for show either. It retains heat evenly and imparts a subtle earthiness that home cooks say a metal pot simply can't replicate. Gumbo's process is a slower, more technical burn, and the roux is the make-or-break step. First, flour is cooked in oil or fat over low to medium heat, stirring constantly, sometimes for 45 minutes to an hour, until it reaches a deep chocolate brown color. Burn it, and you're starting over from scratch. Next, the Holy Trinity gets cooked down into that roux. Stock is added gradually, whisked in to avoid lumps. Then come the proteins, starting with whichever needs the longest cooking time, like chicken or sausage. The whole pot simmers for a minimum of 3 hours, with shellfish and delicate spices added near the end, so they don't overcook. If filet powder is used, it's stirred in only after the pot is removed from the heat, since boiling filet can make the dish stringy. Finally, it's served over rice. Notice the difference in philosophy here. Moqueca is about gentle layering, letting fresh ingredients speak for themselves over a relatively short cook time. Gumbo is about patient transformation, turning humble flour and fat into a deeply flavored foundation that takes real time and technique to master. One dish is a quick coastal lunch. The other can be an all-afternoon labor of love. But which one is actually harder to pull off? We'll get to that soon. First, let's talk about what actually happens on your tongue. Close your eyes and imagine the first spoonful of each. Moqueca hits you with brightness first, the acidity of lime and tomato, followed by the rich, almost buttery sweetness of coconut milk. If it's the Bahian version, the dende oil adds a nutty, slightly smoky depth and a gentle background heat from the Malagueta peppers. It's fresh, vibrant, and layered, but rarely aggressively spicy. The Espirito Santo version swaps that tropical richness for something lighter and more delicate, letting the natural sweetness of the fish shine through. Gumbo is a slow burn in every sense. The deeply toasted roux brings a nutty, almost coffee-like bitterness that forms gumbo's backbone. Then come layers of umami from stock and meat, a gentle vegetal sweetness from the Trinity, and a peppery heat that builds gradually rather than hitting all at once. Okra adds a subtle, earthy, green note, while filet powder, if used, contributes a citrusy, almost root beer-like aroma. So here's the real question for you, the viewer. If you had to choose based on taste alone, would you go for Moqueca's bright, tropical, coconut-forward profile, or Gumbo's smoky, slow-built, umami-rich depth? Drop your guess in the comments before we move on, because we're about to talk texture, and it might change your answer completely. Texture is where these two dishes reveal completely different personalities. Moqueca has a silky, almost creamy broth, thanks to the coconut milk, punctuated by tender, flaky pieces of fish that practically fall apart on your spoon. Shrimp versions add a satisfying snap. The vegetables soften into the broth but retain just enough bite to give the dish some structure. Overall, Moqueca feels light, almost soupy, and refreshing. Gumbo is thicker, heartier, and more viscous, closer to a stew than a soup. The roux gives it a velvety, almost glossy consistency that clings to the rice underneath it. Okra, if used, adds a distinctive slight sliminess, a texture some people love and others need to get used to. Meat versions offer a satisfying chew, while shellfish versions bring bursts of tenderness throughout. If Moqueca is a warm ocean wave, Gumbo is a rich, slow river. Neither is better. They're simply built for different moods. But speaking of building something, how hard is each of these actually to make at home? Let's rate the difficulty. Moqueca comes in at about a 4 out of 10. it's very approachable for home cooks. There's no roux to master, no complicated technique, mostly just good knife skills, quality fresh seafood, and the patience to let flavors meld. The trickiest part is sourcing a proper clay pot and quality dende oil if you want the authentic Bahian version, and knowing not to overcook delicate fish. Gumbo comes in at about a 7 out of 10. It demands real technique. Making a proper dark roux requires standing over the stove, stirring constantly, sometimes for the better part of an hour. Burn it even slightly, and the bitterness ruins the entire pot. Balancing roux, okra, and filet, without over-thickening or making it gluey, as Louisiana cooks call it, takes practice. Add in the layered cooking times for different proteins, and gumbo becomes a dish that rewards experience. So if you're a beginner cook looking for a quick weeknight win, Moqueca is your friend. If you want to spend a Saturday building serious kitchen skills, gumbo is your teacher. Speaking of time, let's talk about exactly how long each one takes. Moqueca is quick, 15 to 20 minutes of prep, marinating the fish and chopping vegetables. 20 to 30 minutes of actual cooking. All in, you're looking at roughly 45 minutes to an hour. Gumbo is a project. 20 to 30 minutes of prep, chopping the trinity and prepping proteins. 30 to 60 minutes just for the roux alone. Then a minimum of 3 hours of simmering. All in, you're often looking at 4+ hours, and many cooks will tell you gumbo actually tastes even better the next day. This makes moqueca the clear choice for a fast, beginner-friendly weeknight dinner, while gumbo is a weekend project, the kind of dish families gather around, checking on the pot, catching up, waiting together. Which brings us to something just as important as flavor. What's actually good for you? A quick note before we dive in. Nutrition varies enormously, based on the specific recipe, portion size, and ingredients used. So think of these as general, ballpark comparisons, rather than precise figures for any single bowl. Moqueca, in a typical serving with fish and rice, tends to be moderate in calories, with richness coming mainly from coconut milk and, if used, dende oil. It's high in lean protein from fish or shrimp. Fat content varies significantly depending on how much coconut milk and palm oil is used. It's naturally low in refined carbohydrates outside of the rice served alongside it, and it contains vitamin C and capsaicin-related compounds from peppers, plus omega-3 fatty acids from the fish. Gumbo, in a typical serving with rice, tends to run higher in calories than moqueca, largely due to the roux, which means oil and flour, and often sausage. It's a good source of protein, especially in versions with chicken, sausage, and seafood combined. It typically runs higher in fat, largely from the roux and any added sausage. It's higher in carbohydrates too, from both the roux and the rice it's served over. And it contains fiber and vitamins from okra and the trinity vegetables, along with iron and B vitamins if sausage or dark meat is used. In short, moqueca tends to lean lighter and more protein-forward, thanks to its lean seafood and coconut-based broth, while gumbo tends to be more calorie-dense and richer, largely because of its roux and often fattier proteins like sausage. Neither is inherently unhealthy. It really comes down to portion size and which proteins and fats are used. Let's dig a little deeper into what these ingredients can actually do for your body. On the moqueca side, fish and shrimp provide high-quality lean protein, and especially in fattier fish, beneficial omega-3 fatty acids associated with heart health. Peppers contribute vitamin C and antioxidant compounds. Tomatoes offer lycopene, an antioxidant linked to general cellular health. Coconut milk contains some minerals, like manganese, though it's also a source of saturated fat, so portion awareness matters for anyone managing their fat intake. And cilantro and garlic bring their own antioxidant properties to the table. The main consideration here is that the Bahian version's dende oil and coconut milk do add saturated fat, so it's worth being mindful of portion size, if that's a concern for you. On the gumbo side, okra is a good source of dietary fiber, which supports digestive and gut health, along with vitamins A and C. The Trinity vegetables contribute fiber, vitamin C, and various antioxidants. Protein sources like chicken and seafood support muscle maintenance, while sausage adds iron and B vitamins. And filet powder, made from sassafras leaves, has traditionally been valued in folk practice, though modern nutritional data on it, specifically, is limited. The main consideration here is that the roux adds refined carbohydrates and fat, and sausage-based versions can run higher in sodium and saturated fat. So gumbo is best thought of as a hearty, occasional indulgence rather than a daily light meal. The balanced takeaway? Both dishes can absolutely fit into a well-rounded diet. Moqueca leans toward a lighter, protein and vegetable-forward meal, while gumbo is a richer, more indulgent comfort food, best enjoyed in moderation, alongside its rice. Neither should be judged purely by calorie count. Both offer real nutritional value from whole food ingredients like seafood, vegetables, and lean proteins. Now, when exactly should you actually be eating these? Moqueca is overwhelmingly a lunch or dinner dish in Brazil, especially popular in coastal towns as a leisurely midday meal enjoyed with family or friends, often lakeside or beachside. It's rarely eaten for breakfast, and almost never as a late-night snack. It's meant to be savored slowly, not rushed. Gumbo is incredibly versatile by comparison. It's a beloved lunch and dinner dish, a staple at Louisiana holiday tables, especially around Christmas and Mardi Gras, and a go-to comfort food any time of year, particularly in cooler months. It even shows up at tailgates and festivals as a hearty, crowd-feeding dish that can simmer in a giant pot for hours while people mingle. So if moqueca is the dish of a lazy, sun-soaked afternoon by the water, gumbo is the dish of a festive gathering, a cold evening, or a celebration that calls for something warm and generous. Speaking of celebrations, just how far have these dishes traveled beyond their home countries? Moqueca has become a symbol of Brazilian cuisine internationally, frequently appearing on menus at Brazilian restaurants across the United States, Europe, and beyond. It's a fixture in tourist guides to Brazil, especially in Bahia and Espírito Santo, where cooking classes and food tours built around moqueca have become popular attractions. As Brazilian cuisine gains global recognition, moqueca is often the flagship dish introduced to newcomers, right alongside feijoada. Gumbo enjoys arguably even broader global name recognition, partly thanks to American pop culture. Gumbo has been referenced in films, TV shows, and songs for decades, cementing its identity as a symbol of not just Louisiana, but American Southern culture as a whole. It's a fixture on Cajun and Creole restaurant menus worldwide, and New Orleans tourism heavily promotes it as a must-try dish, with gumbo cooking classes and food tours drawing visitors from around the globe. Both dishes have also inspired countless fusion adaptations abroad, from vegetarian and vegan moquecas made with jackfruit or tofu, to gumbos made with tofu, plant-based sausage, or entirely different regional spins. Global palates keep reinventing both dishes, which says something powerful about their staying power. But how much does it actually cost to enjoy either one? For moqueca, street food and casual versions are relatively affordable, especially in coastal fishing towns where seafood is locally caught. Restaurant versions run moderate, though pricing can rise quickly with premium shrimp, lobster, or larger portions meant for sharing, since moqueca is very often served in large pots meant for 2 or more people. Premium versions using fresh-caught lobster, crab, or a mix of high-end seafood can push moqueca into a more expensive category, especially outside Brazil, where fresh tropical fish and dendé oil may need to be imported. For gumbo, street food and casual versions are generally inexpensive, especially chicken and sausage-based gumbo, since the base ingredients, flour, Trinity vegetables, and stock, are cheap. Restaurant versions run moderately priced, though seafood gumbo with shrimp, crab, and oysters costs noticeably more than meat-based versions. Premium versions made with high-quality andouille sausage, fresh Gulf shrimp, and blue crab can be a genuine restaurant splurge, especially during peak seafood season. The big cost driver for both dishes is the same: seafood. Meat and vegetable-based versions of both dishes are budget-friendly, while their seafood-forward cousins can become genuinely upscale. Now let's talk about something that goes far beyond price: cultural meaning. Moqueca isn't just food in Brazil, it's identity. In Bahia, it represents the deep, enduring legacy of Afro-Brazilian culture, tied closely to candomblé traditions and the broader story of Bahian resilience and pride. It's considered such a powerful symbol of Brazilian food culture that in a 2013 government survey, it was named the dish that best represents the country to visiting tourists. It's a staple at family gatherings, beachside celebrations, and festive weekends, often prepared as a communal dish meant to be shared straight from the pot. Gumbo occupies a nearly identical space in Louisiana's heart. It's the official state dish, deeply tied to both Creole and Cajun identities, with Creole gumbo associated with New Orleans and southeastern Louisiana, and Cajun gumbo associated with the French-speaking descendants of Acadian settlers in southwestern Louisiana. Gumbo is central to Mardi Gras celebrations, Thanksgiving and Christmas tables across the American South, and countless family recipes passed down for generations, often fiercely guarded and debated. Remember that tomato controversy? What's striking here is how both dishes function as edible time capsules, carrying centuries of colonization, forced migration, cultural blending, and eventual celebration in a single pot. Food this meaningful deserves the perfect drink alongside it. So what should you actually be sipping? For moqueca, coconut water doubles down on the tropical, coconut-forward notes already in the dish. A caipirinha, that classic Brazilian cocktail made with cachaça, lime, and sugar, has an acidity that cuts beautifully through the richness of the coconut milk and dendé oil. A chilled white wine offers a crisp, citrusy option that complements the seafood without overpowering it. And Guaraná soda, a popular Brazilian soft drink, brings a fruity sweetness that balances the dish's mild heat. For gumbo, sweet tea is a classic southern pairing whose sweetness offsets the peppery, savory depth of the stew. A cold beer, particularly a light lager, cleanses the palate between spoonfuls of rich, roux-based stew. Chicory coffee, traditionally enjoyed after a meal in New Orleans, has a slightly bitter roasted flavor that echoes the toasted notes of a dark roux. And a dry rosé has become increasingly popular for cutting through gumbo's richness at more upscale gatherings. Both dishes pair beautifully with something bright and slightly acidic to balance their richness. Proof that great flavor pairing follows universal principles, no matter the continent. Now, what about the calendar? Is there a best season for each? Moqueca shines brightest in Brazil's warmer months, when fresh coastal seafood is most abundant, and locals and tourists alike are drawn to beachside restaurants. It's especially popular during Brazilian summer, from December through February, when outdoor gatherings and festive coastal tourism peak. Gumbo, interestingly, is a year-round dish in Louisiana, but it takes on special importance in the cooler months, from late fall through Mardi Gras season in February or March, when its warming, hearty qualities are most appreciated. Seafood-based gumbo also often peaks alongside Gulf shrimp and crab seasons. So while Moqueca says beach vacation, Gumbo says cozy gathering. Two completely different vibes, both perfectly suited to their climates. Now let's get into the fun stuff, the facts you probably didn't know. Let's start with Moqueca. Fact 1. There isn't just one Moqueca. Brazil actually recognizes at least 3 major regional types: Moqueca Baiana, Moqueca capixaba, and Moqueca paraense, each with its own distinct oil, spice profile, and regional pride. Fact 2. Moqueca paraense, from the Amazonian state of Pará, is served with tucupi, a fermented cassava juice, and jambu, a local herb famous for causing a tingling, numbing sensation on the tongue. Fact 3. The traditional Bahian clay cooking pot isn't just decorative. Cooks season it for weeks before its first use, and many families pass down a single pot for generations. Fact 4. Some historians believe the word moqueca traces even further back to a term simply meaning to wrap, reflecting its origins as fish wrapped in leaves, long before pots were involved. And fact 5. Bahia and Espírito Santo's rivalry over authentic moqueca is so well known that it's practically a running joke across Brazil, each region insisting the other's version isn't the real one. Now, gumbo. Fact 1. The word gumbo has competing linguistic origins. Some trace it to the Bambara word for okra, others to Bantu words like kingombo, and some scholars even connect it to Choctaw terms for sassafras. Fact 2. The popular legend that French housewives invented gumbo during a 1722 frying pan revolt has no documented historical evidence, and modern food historians consider it a myth. Fact 3. Filet powder is traditionally never added while the pot is still on the stove. It's stirred in only after cooking, since boiling it can turn the gumbo unpleasantly stringy. Fact 4. There are technically two major gumbo camps: Creole gumbo, associated with New Orleans, and Cajun gumbo, associated with southwestern Louisiana's French Acadian communities, and each has passionate defenders. And fact 5. A meatless version called gumbo zerbs exists, traditionally made with a mix of slow-cooked greens, historically associated with Lenten observance in Catholic Louisiana households. Two dishes, two continents, and yet somehow an eerily similar pattern of myths, regional rivalries, and hidden variations most people never learn about. So are there other dishes around the world doing something similar? Absolutely. Moqueca has some fascinating cousins. There's bouillabaisse, from France, a seafood stew with its own regional pride and strict authenticity debates, similarly built around a region's local catch. There's peixada, from Brazil and Portugal, a lighter fish stew and close cousin sharing moqueca's Portuguese roots. There's coconut fish curry, found across coastal India, Southeast Asia, and East Africa, sharing moqueca's use of coconut milk as a base, showing how coastal, tropical regions worldwide independently discovered the magic of coconut and seafood. And there's ceviche, from Peru and across Latin America, which, while not cooked the same way, shares moqueca's coastal, citrus-forward, seafood-first identity. Gumbo has its own family tree. There's jambalaya, also from Louisiana, gumbo's closest cousin, sharing the trinity and many proteins, but built more like a rice-based one-pot dish rather than a stew served over rice. There are West African okra soups, still made in Senegal, Nigeria, and beyond, a direct culinary echo of gumbo's African roots. There's gumbo zerbs, already mentioned, proof that even within its own home, gumbo has evolved dramatically. And there's étouffée, another Louisiana classic, roux-based and trinity-driven, generally thicker and served over rice, often considered gumbo's saucier sibling. It's remarkable how many coastal and colonial cultures independently arrived at strikingly similar culinary solutions, proof that great food often follows universal patterns, no matter where it's created. But these dishes haven't stayed frozen in time. So how have they changed? Moqueca has evolved through modern chefs introducing upscale, plated versions in fine dining restaurants, alongside vegetarian and vegan adaptations using hearts of palm, jackfruit, or tofu in place of seafood. Some contemporary cooks experiment with additional seafood, like lobster or octopus, for a more luxurious presentation, while food trucks and casual eateries have made simplified, faster versions accessible to a broader audience, including outside Brazil. Gumbo has seen enormous regional and modern reinvention too, from lighter, health-conscious versions using less oil in the roux, to vegetarian and vegan gumbos built on smoked tofu and vegetable stock, to fusion versions incorporating ingredients like curry spices or Asian-inspired proteins. Chefs have also played with deconstructed gumbo presentations in fine dining, while the classic home-style version remains a cherished, largely unchanged tradition in most Louisiana households. Both dishes prove something important. Tradition and innovation aren't opposites. They can coexist beautifully, with each generation adding its own chapter to a very old story. So after all of this, how do these two legendary stews actually stack up against each other? Remember, this isn't about crowning one dish as better. It's about recognizing where each one truly shines. In appearance, Moqueca is vibrant orange-red and glossy, visually tropical and inviting, while Gumbo is deep, dark, and rustic, visually rich and comforting. In aroma, Moqueca is bright, coconut-forward, and citrusy, while Gumbo is smoky, toasty, and deeply savory. In taste, Moqueca is fresh and layered with mild heat, while Gumbo is deep, smoky, and slow-building in its spice. In texture, Moqueca is light, silky, with tender seafood, while Gumbo is thick, hearty, and velvety. In nutrition, Moqueca tends to be lighter and lean protein forward, while Gumbo runs richer and more calorie-dense. In health benefits, both are strong. Moqueca offers omega-3s, lean protein, and antioxidants, while Gumbo offers fiber, protein, and vegetables, though it runs heavier in fat and sodium. In value for money, Moqueca is great in coastal regions, but pricier with premium seafood, and the same is true of Gumbo, with its own premium seafood versions. In cultural importance, Moqueca is a defining symbol of Afro-Brazilian and Bahian identity, while Gumbo is Louisiana's official state dish and cultural cornerstone. In difficulty, Moqueca is beginner-friendly at around a 4 out of 10, while Gumbo requires real technique, at around a 7 out of 10. In uniqueness, Moqueca offers distinctive clay pot cooking and a tropical flavor base, while Gumbo offers a distinctive roux-building technique and filet tradition. In tourist appeal, Moqueca is a major draw in Bahia and Espírito Santo, while Gumbo is a major draw in New Orleans and across Louisiana. In everyday enjoyment, Moqueca is a relaxed, refreshing coastal meal, while Gumbo is a warming, communal comfort food. In presentation, Moqueca has rustic charm, served straight from the clay pot, while Gumbo offers hearty, generous ladled bowls over rice. And in versatility, Moqueca adapts across seafood types and regional oils, while Gumbo adapts across proteins, thickeners, and spice levels. Moqueca wins hearts with its freshness, brightness, and coastal charm. Gumbo wins hearts with its depth, warmth, and comforting complexity. Different climates, different histories, different moods, but equally deserving of the love and respect they've earned. So there you have it, two incredible stews, born an ocean apart, yet connected by an almost identical story. Indigenous ingenuity, the forced displacement and extraordinary resilience of enslaved African communities, and generations of colonial and cultural blending, all simmering together into something the whole world now celebrates. Moqueca carries the sun, the coast, and the vibrant spirit of Bahia in every spoonful. Gumbo carries the smoke, the soul, and the generous warmth of Louisiana in every bowl. Neither one is better. They're both extraordinary answers to the same universal question. How do you turn hardship, scarcity, and cultural collision into something beautiful enough to bring people together at the table. Now it's your turn. Which one would you choose, and why? Have you tried either dish before? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, tell us in the comments which two foods we should compare next. We're always looking for our next delicious rabbit hole. Until next time, keep exploring the world, one bowl at a time.